Good morning guys. Alright, we're gonna be continuing on with the solar. We're getting really close to being finished. So I'm gonna work on trenching, digging a trench, going from the shed here all the way over to where the solar panels are. So I'm gonna go at least 2 feet deep for the direct burial of the wire. That's pretty well a standard code, I think, in most places, about 2 feet deep. Would you guys agree with me? 2 feet? 2 feet's good? Once the trench is dug, I'm gonna get a measurement for how long the cable needs to be. Now, this is an important thing if you're gonna be running electrical wires, especially something underground, is you really want to take all the measurements involved. Obviously, you want the length measurement, so how far it goes, like how far the shed is from where the solar panels are. But also make sure you take into account the depth difference as well and include that into your measurement. So I'm gonna be going 2 feet down, and right at the base of the post there, the combiner box is probably about 5 feet above ground. So I have to remember, obviously along with the length, I have to add an extra 7 feet, and then it'll probably be another about 6 or 7 feet going up into the shed as well. And then in order to make all your connection stuff, it's good to add at least another foot or two. So just keep that in mind if you're gonna be running any long lengths of wire. Always measure twice, because once you have that wire, you're kind of stuck with it. I do see a lot of remnant wire at Lowe's and Home Depot that people do return, but I think if you probably go to like a standard electrical supply place, like if you have a cut piece of wire, you better make sure that it's the right length, or else I don't think you can return it to certain electrical places. So make sure you just double check, take the measurements a couple times, add on a few extra feet so that you can make your connections and all that kind of stuff. It might be at least like $100 worth of cable, and if that cable is just like that much too short, then the cable's almost, it's not, I wouldn't say that it's completely useless, but you'd have to add in like a junction box or something above ground. It would just kind of suck. So just make sure you get a few extra feet. Let's begin. Alright guys, we are back at it again, working on the solar. So you would have just seen me finishing off the trench there with the backhoe. So we're going to be running the wire today from the charge controller into the combiner box where the solar panels are. So when I originally planned on doing this, I was just going to get direct burial wire. And direct burial wire is different than regular electrical wire. Just because, well, the main difference is probably quite obvious. You can just bury it directly in the ground, whereas most wire that you buy at the store, you can't just bury it under the ground. So the direct burial wire has like a special coating on it so that it's protected when it's underground. Now, the size of wire that we need going from the combiner box into the charge controller is basically Liam and I figured that it would need to be number 4 copper, just based on how many amps that are going to be going through the wire and how long the run is. Because if you have a run that's like, so for example, this one's just about 80 feet from the panels into the end of the shed, you have to derate the wire based on how long that it's going to be as well. So that's kind of getting into more of the specifics about electrical stuff, but it's something to definitely to keep in mind. Because if you think, okay, well, I know that a 12 gauge can hold 20 amps, but the 12 gauge can only do 20 amps of ampacity through it, only over a certain distance. Once it gets too long, then you need to derate the wire, so you'd have to go up to a 10 gauge or an 8 gauge or something like that, based on the length. So based on the run of wire, we needed number 4 copper. And the unfortunate thing is that I found out when I called a couple of electrical supply places is that they don't even make number 4 copper for direct burial, or at least it just wasn't available to them. So I should have done like a little bit of research just before I originally planned to do that. It doesn't really change anything. The only thing that it changes is that I had to buy conduit. That was the only difference. So if we're gonna be running this number 4 copper underground, it has to be in a conduit. So that just makes everything just a little bit more tricky and a little bit more annoying. It's just a lot easier just to throw the wire underground and then just cover it up with dirt. So we're gonna have to run it in conduit. Now the method that I'm gonna be using in order to run the wire through the conduit is technically not to code. And you might be thinking to yourself, why wouldn't you be doing it to code? So specifically when you're running wire through a conduit, the conduit itself has to be fastened and completely attached together. So say for example, if you're running conduit through a ceiling in a Domino's pizza. I've actually wired up a number of Domino's pizzas. This was like back in the day, going 6 or 7 years back. Typically what you have coming out of the panels, you have electrical conduits coming out, and you secure and fasten everything first, and then you run the wire through it. What I'm gonna be doing with this, it's not to code, I'm already aware of that. So what I'm gonna basically do is lay the wire out the entire length, and then I'm gonna start sliding on the conduit. So that's technically not to code, doing it like that. And specifically with using PVC, you really have to be careful with this method because when you're gluing the pipes together, you want to make sure that obviously none of the glue gets on the wire because PVC glue, if you get it on the wire, it would literally like melt the wire together and possibly create a dead short in the wire, which is what you don't want. And so that's why codes are in place so that you don't do stuff like this. But since I'm aware of the code and I know specifically what I don't want to do, I can bend the rules, so to speak. So there's a little bit of a trick gluing the pipes together. I'm well aware that this isn't a code, so this is gonna be a little bit easier to run. And getting the conduits to match up, specifically at that end there, because there's already a conduit coming out of the bottom of the shed, it's gonna be like a little bit tricky, I guess. But I guess that's the fun of it. All right, let's begin. right, good evening, good evening. So I've got all the positives. I've got all those to the combiner box here. So we've got the 4 positives. I've got 2 of the negatives, so I need 2 more. The really annoying thing is that I need probably about another 20 feet of this PV cable in order to finish it, but I have to drive 45 minutes to get it. So that's kind of annoying, but we're almost there. We're getting there. This also looks like a complete mess right now. I'll just clean that up with some zip ties and then we're all good with that. But other than that, but the wire is totally run coming from the combiner box into the charge controller there. So that's good. That was probably like the last kind of like big-ish job. The rest of it's just like little like just connecting wires and lugs and shit like that. So inside of the combiner box, I made all these little jumpers here. So this is the positive side, this is the negative side. All the positives will go into, they'll go into a DC breaker here. Then all the negatives go on the negative bar here. And then also the negative, the big negative will go on there. And then the big 4-gauge positive, I believe, goes up on a bus bar. There's something that goes on up here. So what's really nice with these connectors here is that this will just all connect together nice and simply like that. And then, yeah, cool. So yeah, this all kind of looks like a mess, but I'll clean it up. The wire and the conduit here went together pretty nicely. I'm happy with that. The trench got a little deep here in the middle. I wasn't really paying attention when I was using the backhoe. And it's probably, it's definitely over 3 feet deep, so it doesn't really matter though. So the wire from the panels comes up this conduit. Liam wants to put some diodes here just because he just wants a little bit of extra security. But from here it just goes on up into here. So we just have to terminate our connections right on there. And then all I have to do is just connect the rest of this stuff up here, which really won't take very much time. And then I have to make all the jumpers for the batteries here. So I've got some 2-gauge welding wire. I've got my crimp terminal lugs, or I don't know what you call them. Then I've got a hydraulic crimping tool. It might be a tiny shed, but I've got 1,000,001 tools. So yeah, tomorrow morning I'll run to Sierra Vista really quickly, grab that wire, grab a reducing washer, because for some reason on that combiner box, it went from a 3/4 inch knockout up to 1 1/4 inch, and I'm running 1-inch pipe right now, or 1-inch conduit. So I was really kind of annoyed when I saw that because I was like, man, I have to go back to the hardware store again. But tomorrow I can finish everything and we can be running on solar. Anyways guys, thanks so much for watching. Leave your questions and comments down below, and I'll catch you on the next video. Talk to you soon. Peace.